week's National 5 PE lesson. Today we're going to look at the social factor and the impact it has on performance in sport. Today we're hoping to develop our understanding of how the social factor impacts on our performance in sport, and by the end of today's lesson hopefully you'll be able to identify different sub-factors for the social factor and be able to explain the impact they have on performance using the correct answer structure. Your starter task is to think back to previous lessons on the mental and emotional factor and write down the different sub-factors that have been covered. There is 2 for each. Try and do this from memory and don't look back at your notes. So from the first lesson by Mr. Grant, you should have concentration and motivation under the mental heading, and under the emotional heading you should have anger and fear. If you've put anxiety there, you'll also get the mark. So give yourself a mark out of 4. Well done if you got all 4 of those. Your first task in today's lesson is to try and come up with a definition for both of these sub-factors. So, what is communication and what is team dynamics? Try and describe these in your own words and put your answer on the Google Doc. So, what is communication? Communication is, in the dictionary, about imparting or exchanging information with others. And this could be done verbally through speaking, or it can be done non-verbally by signalling, waving, or things like eye contact and body language. Some real-life examples of communication could be through sending a text, calling somebody, simply having a face-to-face conversation, or by conveying your feelings by giving someone a look. Perhaps you've done this in the past by giving someone a dirty look. And lastly, it could be by waving or giving a gesture to a friend. These are all ways of communicating. Here are some examples of communication from basketball and from football. Scan the QR codes and watch each of the videos and then answer the questions on the Google Doc. On the screen now are some examples of when communication is important in sport. It's crucial at National 5 PE that you're able to give specific examples of when you need to communicate in sport. So I need to communicate to receive the ball in space. I need to talk to my teammates when defending to organise who I am marking. I talk to my teammates to identify that I'm going to play the ball. I communicate by gesturing, so that's that non-verbal communication we spoke about earlier, to a teammate where I want them to pass, where I want them to run, or where I want them to move. And lastly, I communicate with my team to tell others that there is space. Team dynamics is all to do with how individuals in a group interact. If a group has positive team dynamics, then team members will trust each other, they'll work collectively together, and they'll be able to hold each other accountable. Holding people accountable means that they recognise when they are responsible for making a mistake or perhaps their performance wasn't up to standard. When a team has all of these elements, it is said to have a positive team dynamic, and this hopefully will mean that they are more successful because there is less chance of conflict. To try and put this into perspective, if you think about when you're at school and your teacher puts you into a group with people that you don't like or you don't speak to, think about how would you act? Would you put in your best effort? Would you be willing to persevere when things get difficult or perhaps the group was struggling with a task? Would you voice your own opinion? And would you change your behaviour to fit in? Now, conversely, think about if you were in a group with your friends or people that you like. Think about how you're going to put in more effort, how much harder you would work. When things get difficult, you would persevere, you would keep trying, you would be resilient, and you would feel that you're able to speak up and have your opinion heard. So in that situation, when you're working with a group that has good team dynamics, you're much more willing to put in effort and persevere when things get difficult. And it's the same in sport. Scan the QR codes and watch each of the videos and then answer the questions on the Google Doc. At National 5 PE, you're going to be asked to explain the impact that the social factor has on performance. If your team has positive team dynamics, you have good team dynamics, then the impact this will have is that team members trust each other, everyone will have a defined role or position within the group, they hold each other responsible for their actions, and this will lead to an increase in overall team performance as they get the best out of every team member. Similar to what we said previously, if your team has poor team dynamics, then the team members don't trust each other, they don't work as part of a team, they're not sure of their role, and they don't hold each other accountable for their mistakes and poor performance. This leads to a decrease in overall team performance, and they do not get the best out of their individual players. We're now going to look at how we answer these questions at National 5 PE. To answer the explain questions, we're going to use a 3-step process. The first part of the process is to give a specific sporting example. It's really important that we give a detailed example here, as it will make the rest of your answer easier and it will make it flow better. The second part is to explain the impact that your good communication or your bad communication then had on you as a performer. We're going to use the language "this means." And the third part is to explain the impact that your good or bad communication has on the activity and your team's performance. And we're going to use the language "this leads to." Here you can see 2 example answers written in the 3-step process, one for the emotional factor and one for the mental factor. If we look at the bottom one just now from the mental factor, focusing on concentration, the example that this person has written here for the first stage: you need to concentrate when playing half-court man-to-man defence in basketball. The second part is to give the impact this has on you. This means that you will be able to focus on tracking and marking your opponent whilst not getting distracted by the movements of others around you. And the third part is to explain the impact this has on the game. This leads to you staying tight to your opponent and intercepting passes that are made to them. Your last task for today is to have a go at using the 3-step process to write 2 answers for the social factor. We're going to try and explain the impact that communication and team dynamics has on performance in a sport. So the first part of the 3-step process is to give a specific sporting example. So if we take football and playing as a winger, for example, I might say something like, communication is important when playing as a winger in football. That would be my first sentence. The next part is to then explain the impact of having good communication and how that would help me as a winger. So say something like, this means you can call for the ball when you are in space. And the last part is then the impact this has on performance. So if I've got the ball in space, what's this maybe going to lead to? This leads to me being able to get down the wing and put a cross into the box, giving my team an opportunity to score. And that last bit there is the impact that this has on the performance and how good communication is going to help my team. Now you're going to have a go at writing 2 answers, one for communication and one for team dynamics, on the Google Doc. Here are 2 example answers that we as teachers have written. The first one is about communication. Communication is important as a striker in football when looking to make a run in behind the defence. So that's that specific example that we've been talking about. This means I can tell the centre mid that I'm about to run in behind the defence and he can pass the ball quickly for me to run onto. The last part is about the impact that this has on the game and how does it affect the opposition. This leads to me getting in behind the defence, through on goal, and giving me an opportunity to score and put my team in the lead. And that's the impact, because we've got an opportunity to score and potentially go ahead in the game.